Hello, How To Bob here, and it's time to change the rear brakes in my F250 Ford pickup truck. Now I'm going to get started by blocking the front wheels. I've got a couple wheel chocks here. I'll put those in place just to make sure the vehicle doesn't roll while I jack the rear of the vehicle up. Then I'm going to go back to my rear and pull off the lug nut cover here. And I like to use a rubber coated pry bar here, and I can pry out these little slots right here, and it comes right off. So next I'm going to loosen up my lug nuts, and I'm just going to go around and loosen them up a little bit, each one, so that when I jack the vehicle up I can easily remove all the lug nuts. Once I get them loose, I can go ahead and jack my vehicle up. And I just take it so the wheel comes right off the ground, tire's not touching, that's good enough. Then I can remove all the lug nuts. And once I get all the lug nuts removed, just take the tire and set it off out of the way here. Now I've got my caliper here, and what I have to do now is pull my caliper and kind of gently pry it apart. Just go slowly. What we're doing is spreading it so that I can pull my caliper off, pushing the brake pads apart, putting the calipers back into the inward position. Once I get that done, I can go ahead and loosen up my caliper attachment bolts here. And sometimes these get pretty hard. If you can have an impact, you can use that. I'm going to cheat here and use a hammer just to tap this down. It's pretty tight. So once I get that loose, I can go ahead and remove these two caliper holding nuts here. And I've got a wire set up so that once I get my caliper out, I can just take my wire and hang my caliper from the wire so that the hose does not get damaged from the weight of the caliper. You don't want to hang your caliper off the hydraulic hose there. So now I've got my caliper off, I can remove my brake pads, and you can see they're in pretty bad shape. Definitely waited too long, getting way to the end of their life. I'm going to prep my new ones with a brake disc quiet. I just spread a little bit on there with my finger and let that set up for a minute, and then I'm ready to go ahead and put my return springs. This brake kit came with a set of return springs, and I just go ahead and put them on each pad. That way my pads are ready to go. So I've got them all put in, and you can see what this does is it causes the brake pad to pull off of the rotor. Gives it a little spring action here. That way it doesn't ride on there. Next I'm going to take some grease and I'm going to work it in the channels here. There's 4 channels where the brake pads slide back and forth. This will make the operation of your brake pads work a lot smoother. So I want to hit all 4 channels, work some grease into there, make sure you don't get any on the rotors. Then I can put my brake pads in place. Just put the little notches into the channels. Make sure my springs are in the correct place. And once I push them in, push it up against the rotor, you can see that it's spring loaded somewhat, just a little bit, enough to pull it off of the rotors when I let off the brakes. I'm going to repeat the process for the inner brake pad here. Might be a little difficult to see, but what I'm doing is putting tabs in the channels, and you can see it slides back and forth real nice. And the next thing I'm going to do is take my caliper, and I want to draw the caliper back. The cylinders, there's 2 of them on this one. I'm going to draw both of them back in as far as I can so that when I put this caliper back on, it'll go around the brake pads. So I really need all the space I can get. So now I've got it drawn all the way back in. Take my wire off and slide my caliper over top of the brake pads, and I'll have to push in on the brake pads slightly because they are spring loaded now. So once I get that slid into place, I can put my bolt on here. I like to put a little Loctite on there. It doesn't hurt to put Loctite on just to make sure. It's a pretty important part here. So put both of them in, get them lined up, and then I can tighten them down with a ratchet. And this one, the other side of the nut was turning, so I had to use my channel locks here. And same with this one, so just to make sure I get it good enough and tight. And then I can put my tire back on. So get my tire on there. I want to put all my lug nuts on by hand first. If you have an impact, I wouldn't recommend just throwing them on with an impact. You want to put them on by hand first to make sure you don't cross them. Next, I'm going to lower my vehicle and tighten my lug nuts to 150 foot-pounds of torque. And once I get all of them tightened up, I can put my lug nut cover back on. And last but not least, I want to start up the vehicle and pump the brakes until my brake pedal becomes firm. And that's just to make sure the fluid gets down to the brakes where it needs to be. So this is how you change the rear brakes on an F250 Ford pickup truck. I'm How To Bob. Thanks for watching.